We live on planet Earth. We've mapped continents, named mountains, and even walked on the moon. But here's something wild. Most of our own planet remains unexplored. We like to believe we know every corner of the Earth, but in truth, we're still far from that, because the majority of our world, is still a complete mystery. And the reason for that mystery lies beneath the surface. Literally, you see. Humans have walked on nearly every piece of dry land on Earth, but over 70% of the planet's surface is covered by water, oceans. And most of those oceans remain completely unexplored to this day. Even the life forms within them are full of unanswered questions. Scientists estimate that there are over 2 million different species living in our oceans, and over 90% of them have never even been described by science. That's right. We are surrounded by a sea of uncertainty, isolated, islands of knowledge floating in an ocean of the unknown, immersed in our own ignorance. Have you ever stopped to think, really think, that when you're standing in the ocean, even just near the shore, you have no idea what lies beneath your feet? Shakespeare once said, "There are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in our philosophy." But if he'd looked at the ocean floor, he might have realized there are far more things beneath the sea. Because down there, below the waves, lie mysteries far deeper than we can imagine. Quite literally, the oceans are unimaginably deep. So deep, in fact, that the very thought of it terrifies some people. That fear even has a name: thalassophobia, the fear of deep, dark water. So if you're one of them, consider this your trigger warning. Because here at Wild Curious, it's time for us to dive in. Let's talk about how deep the ocean really is. Let's suppose you wanted to explore the ocean yourself, to dive in and see what's down there with your own eyes. As soon as you wade into the sea and walk out, just a few meters, you reach a depth of around 2 meters. That's enough for your feet to leave the ground. You'd have to start swimming. Go a bit deeper, and things get tricky. In the first few meters, you can dive without any special equipment. But if you want to go further, you'll need an oxygen tank. Even then, you can't go too far. According to international diving organizations, the maximum safe depth for recreational diving is around 40 meters. Still, let's keep going, hypothetically. At this depth, the entire Christ the Redeemer statue in Brazil would be submerged. Go deeper, and at 90 meters, the Statue of Liberty is completely underwater. Around 100 meters deep, sunlight still reaches you, but it's beginning to fade. Beyond that point, the ocean gets darker and darker, until it's pitch black. Yet, some brave humans have gone far deeper. The world record for the deepest scuba dive is just over 300 meters, about the height of the Eiffel Tower, but underwater. At 400 meters, you reach the operating range of military submarines. And here's the shocking part. We've only descended less than 5% of the way to the deepest part of the ocean. So let's keep sinking. At 500 meters, there's almost no light left. Soon, you leave the last rays of sunlight behind. At 1,000 meters, you've entered the bathypelagic zone, also known as the midnight zone. You could open your eyes wide, but see absolutely nothing. It's total darkness. At this depth, you're deeper than any skyscraper ever built. And yet, we're not even close to the bottom. This zone is also freezing cold, with temperatures around 4 degrees Celsius, about 39 degrees Fahrenheit. But cold isn't your biggest problem here. The pressure at this depth is over 5,000 pounds per square inch. That's like having a heavy truck pressing down on every inch of your body. That's why pressure is the biggest obstacle to deep-sea exploration. And tragically, this is also where the Titan submersible met its end, a small vessel carrying tourists hoping to see the wreck of the Titanic. The Titanic itself lies at a depth of about 3,800 meters, nearly 4 kilometers beneath the ocean surface. Keep going. And at 4,000 meters, we reach the abyssal zone, a region populated by bizarre and terrifying creatures, like the Melanocetus johnsoni, more famously known as the anglerfish. Yes, the one from Finding Nemo with the glowing lure. Here, animals have developed bioluminescence, glowing body parts, to attract prey in the pitch black. And then We reached the final zone, the Hadal-Pelagic Zone, named after Hades, the Greek god of the underworld. This is the deepest region of the ocean, starting at 6,000 meters and going all the way down to the deepest point on Earth, the Mariana Trench. Located in the Pacific Ocean, the trench reaches a depth of about 11,000 meters. That's deeper than Mount Everest is tall. Yes, our planet is deeper than it is tall, but has anyone actually been there? Amazingly, yes. Humans have reached the bottom, but only a few. The journey began thousands of years ago with Archimedes and his studies of buoyancy, that upward force experienced by objects in water. These principles inspired inventors to create the first underwater vessels. Even Leonardo da Vinci once sketched a design for a submarine, but the first working submarine was built in the early 1600s by Cornelius Drebbel, a strange paddle-powered boat connected to the surface by an air tube. Over the centuries, submarines evolved, powered by compressed air, diesel engines, and even nuclear power. During wartime, these machines transformed military strategy, but they also sparked a new kind of exploration race, this time not for space, but for the deep sea dock. In the 1930s, Americans William Beebe and Otis Barton descended to 1,000 meters in a spherical metal capsule called the bathysphere, a tiny iron ball just large enough for two people. Just looking at it is enough to make you feel claustrophobic. Later, in 1960, a historic moment arrived. Swiss oceanographer Jacques Piccard and U.S. Navy Lieutenant Don Walsh boarded a vessel called the Trieste and descended for nearly 5 hours into the Mariana Trench. They became the first humans in history to reach the deepest point on Earth. This happened 9 years before humans walked on the moon. And just like the space race, this achievement wasn't repeated for decades. The next person to reach the bottom was James Cameron in 2012, yes, the director of Titanic. At that point in history, more people had walked on the moon than reached the bottom of the ocean. Only recently has that changed, thanks to a modern submersible called the Limiting Factor, which has now completed over 20 missions to the ocean's deepest depths. As of today, 27 people have visited the bottom of the trench. But wait, how do we actually know the ocean is 11,000 meters deep? And how can we measure it if we've barely explored it? Well, mapping the ocean floor is one of the biggest scientific challenges on Earth. In fact, our maps of Mars are far more detailed than our maps of Earth's seafloor. How detailed? Maps of Mars have a resolution of about 5 meters per pixel. But for the ocean floor, it's about 1,000 meters per pixel. That's a huge difference. Why? Because satellites can't see through water, not all the way to the bottom, but they can detect tiny changes in the height of the ocean's surface. You see, the ocean isn't perfectly flat. If there's a mountain or a trench beneath the surface, it can cause the water above it to bulge slightly, just a few centimeters. These subtle bulges help scientists guess the shape of the seafloor without ever going underwater. Still, it's not accurate enough. To truly map the ocean floor, we rely on sonar. A sonar device sends a sound wave from a ship to the bottom and measures how long it takes to bounce back. But to map the entire ocean like this, ship by ship, point by point, it would take decades. That's why, in 2017, a global effort called Seabed 2030 was launched, a project with one bold goal: to map 100% of the ocean floor by the year 2030. Back then, only 6% of the ocean had been mapped. Today, that number is over 20% and growing. Their goal is to map the deep ocean at 800 meters per pixel and busy coastal areas at just 3 meters per pixel. But this effort isn't without controversy. Some scientists worry that mapping the deep ocean might make it easier to mine for resources, not just oil, but rare metals like manganese, iron, and polymetallic nodules used in batteries, solar panels, and even weapons. And yes, we've already found plastic bags at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. But turning away from knowledge, out of fear, goes against the spirit of science. It goes against the spirit of curiosity, because knowing what's down there could help us in countless ways, from locating shipwrecks, to improving internet cables, to understanding ocean currents, to predicting tsunamis, to better preparing for climate change. In other words, mapping the ocean could save lives. But more than that, it brings us closer to something we've always longed for, that feeling of discovery, that ancient human urge to explore the unknown. Because make no mistake, the deep ocean is the final frontier of exploration on this planet. It's the last place on Earth that is truly wild, truly untouched, and truly unknown. And slowly, mystery by mystery, it's being revealed right before our eyes. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay curious.